So, I mean, whether you like this movie or not, I guess we can all agree on one thing. It had a lot of soul put into it. I'm sorry, I'm retiring. I'm officially declaring my retirement. Soul. So Soul is a story of a jazz teacher named Joe Gardner who finally gets the gig that's going to validate his entire career choice. Is going to prove all the haters wrong. The naysayers are finally going to have to respect what he does. He gets what should be the thing that's going to start him towards his path of becoming a jazz legend. And then he dies. He dies. He's dead now. He's dead. But he's not ready to be dead because he still has stuff to do. So it's like, well, how can I get back to Earth? So he accidentally joins this mentorship program, and he has to take care of this soul called 22, voiced by Tina Fey. Joe's voiced by Jamie Foxx, by the way. He does a great job in the movie. But the premise is that you have to learn all the aspects that go into being a person before you're ready to go start living. And 22 has not done that yet, and no mentor that she's been assigned in the past has been able to get her there. And she's had like Socrates, Abraham Lincoln, Mother Teresa, all sorts of things. So it's funny because these titans of being influential were not able to help her, and now it comes down to Joe having to figure out how to do it. So that's a pretty cool thing. But on the way, they try to figure out how to get Joe back in his body, so they get sent to Earth, and he accidentally ends up in a cat, and 22 ends up in his body. So you have that zany type of thing. The thing that still makes it an engaging movie for the kids to watch, while the deeper, more meaningful messages are there to keep the adults entertained and keep them occupied. And on that, the movie does a phenomenal job. There's so much here to dissect. This movie is basically Inside Out, but more grown up, which makes sense because it was directed by Pete Docter, the same guy that directed Inside Out. Before I get too deep into that, though, I want to call out something that was annoying. There was a controversy around this movie because there's finally a mainstream animated movie about black people, because that sort of thing doesn't really happen very often, right? I was excited because it was focusing on not only black people, putting us in a positive light, but also focusing on music, which is something that I love. It's even got Daveed Diggs, my favorite rapper, in it. I wish he had a bigger part. But people were complaining because there's finally a Pixar movie about black people, and the black guy gets turned blue, and then he gets turned into a cat. And it's like, brothers can't stay brothers. And I'm just like, look, I'm a black person telling you it doesn't matter. That type of thing is there for the kids that are watching the movie to enjoy. It has no greater impact on the image of black people in the movie. It doesn't undercut the message in any sort of way. It is the plot. That's what that is. That's how you get the movie. Nothing more, nothing less. But there's a lot of themes in this movie of regret and identity and not really addiction, but letting yourself become consumed by a goal or a vision that you have, and self-acceptance and understanding of others. There's so much that goes into this movie and making it a relatable and learnable story. And it's just, I feel like these types of themes, the thought of dreading death at this stage of your life because you don't feel like you've done enough, the feeling of having to let go of the thought or the fear that you're disappointing somebody by doing what you want to do and not what somebody else wanted you to do. The thought of worrying about, are you going to run out of time before you can make your dreams come true? That type of thing. That's not really something that the target audience of your general average Pixar movie is going to pick up on. People that are 14 and below don't really resonate with that sort of thing the way that somebody who's in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s even, because it's a thing that as you get older, these feelings start to build more and more within you. Even me, I'm 21, and I still feel like if I had started YouTube when I was 14 like I wanted to, I'd be way more successful now. Or if I started making music when I wanted to, or if I was more serious about doing this or doing that, where would I be in life? Stuff like that is lost on kids. And I find that interesting because it could be one of those situations with like Toy Story, where you watch it as a kid like I did, and then 20 years later you watch it again and you're just like, huh, that's kind of about something different than I thought it was. So that's what I'm hoping we get out of Soul, something where the kids that watched it this year can visit it in a decade or two and gain something completely different from it. That's the beauty I feel in most Pixar movies. Incredibles, A Bug's Life, Up, Ratatouille, Wall-E, stuff like that. You can come back older with a different perspective and with new experiences in your life and gain something completely different from those movies. Cars, Brave, Onward, Good Dinosaur, not so much. But, well, I mean, Onward wasn't bad or anything like that. I just feel like you have to be in a very specific demographic for that to have resonated with you. This, I feel like, applies to most adults. On an anecdotal note, though, I really enjoyed that Joe had this touchy relationship with his mother where he felt like she didn't understand his passions of what he wanted to do with his life. And it was all about like, well, if you're not making money with this, then you're wasting your time. Because I myself have been there with my mother and other people that swore up and down that they were like, oh, whatever makes you happy or whatever. But because things worked out a certain way, they weren't exactly pleased with that. But none of that really matters all that much in the grand scheme of things, because if you are doing what you love and it's working for you, that's all that matters. Now, the comedy that you come to expect from your average Pixar movie, it's definitely here. It is here in waves. And there's so much heart in this movie. My camera, we're just going to have to deal with this for a while. But there's so much heart in this movie, and it made me emotional. I hate to admit, I did cry twice watching this movie. I cried when he went to talk to his mother, and he finally got everything that he wanted off of his chest, and they reached that understanding. Because I was just like, that's a moment that I myself have been wanting in my life for a long time, and I just haven't had that. And then when 22 was a lost soul, and he's doing everything he can to show her that he made a mistake, there's nothing wrong with her, she's fine. When he's giving her that type of validation, it got me again, because I have spent years of my own life hating myself and punishing myself for things that aren't truly my fault, but I've carried this guilt that I don't need. And, it's taken a long time to lift that own weight off of my shoulders, but I'm getting there. And it's just nice when you have those types of feelings and they're addressed in a way that doesn't cast shame on them. Like, to compare this to a completely different type of movie, Joker, right? That movie highlights mental illness and how it is treated in America, but it does not provide any sort of light at the end of the tunnel. I know it's not that type of movie, but if you are suffering the same type of pain that Arthur is suffering in the movie, you get no validation, really. It's just like, oh, okay, he's suffering just as bad as I am. But there's no sense of like, I'm going through this, but it will be okay. It does get better. That's the type of thing that you want if you're having a negative situation in your own life that is being reflected in a work of fiction. You don't want to be reminded of how bleak the situation is. You want to be shown that it does get better. All wounds are healed with time. That's the sort of message, at least, that I want to see. And that's why I enjoyed Soul so much. And that's why it's probably Pixar's second or third best movie. Don't ask me what number 1 and 2 would be. Couldn't tell you. Do I even need to highlight how beautiful the animation was? I feel like after Toy Story 4, we all just know that Pixar is just a staff full of wizards that can do no wrong when it comes to animation. Of course, that was top tier. Some of the best I've ever seen in an animated movie ever. But I just love that this movie teaches you to focus on your passions, but do not let yourself be consumed by them, and do not stress yourself because of how others might feel or how long it's taking. As long as you can find your purpose and be happy with what you're doing, that's all that matters. And it's that exact reason that I will say that Soul was spectabulous. I know, the first spectabulous of the year 2021. I don't think I gave any out last year because I only reviewed a handful of movies that came out that year. What's funny is I still have reviews recorded for a couple of movies that I did watch last year that I just never released. If you want me to release them, you can go ahead and tell me. I might. But with all that being said, have you seen Soul? What did you think about it? Whatever it is, whatever you think, I've uploaded. Educate me. As always, if you want more videos from me, go ahead and click somewhere on the screen, and I will see you in the next video.